Imagine the Earth not as a fixed place, but as something breathing. Not with lungs or rhythm like ours, but with cycles slow, unyielding patterns of growth, collapse, and renewal. For over 4 billion years, this planet has never stood still. Continents have collided and drifted apart. Oceans have swelled and disappeared. Mountains have risen, then worn down into whispers. And through all of this, life has appeared, flourished, vanished, and re-emerged in strange, altered forms. What we call life on Earth is not one story, but many. A sequence of chapters written in the language of stone, ash, and silence. There have been 5 great mass extinction events in Earth's long, patient history. Each wiped away most of the species alive at the time. Each cleared the stage for something new. These were not single moments, but long, drawn-out catastrophes, emotion collapses measured in millions of years. They remind us that life is not guaranteed. That the Earth, though beautiful, can be indifferent. That survival depends not just on strength, but on timing, on place, and sometimes on pure chance. Tonight, we begin with the first of these great endings, the Ordovician-Silurian extinction, some 443 million years ago. A world you wouldn't recognize. A time before trees, before insects, before bones even. Yet even then, the Earth was alive with complexity, and then not changed. Let us begin. Segment 1. Why you wouldn't last a day in the Ordovician-Silurian extinction. The year is meaningless. The sky looks the same, but you would not survive under it. The oxygen is low, barely half of what you breathe today. The land is empty and silent. Not a tree, not a flower. Just bare rock, sand, and the occasional mat of primitive moss clinging to damp places near the sea. You wouldn't walk here for long. Your lungs would burn, and your balance would fail. But life is not here on land. It's in the oceans. Vast teeming seas cover much of the planet, warm and shallow and glittering with strange life. Giant cephalopods hunt with curling tentacles. Trilobites scurry over reefs built not of coral, but of early sponge-like creatures called stromatoporoids. There are no fish with jaws, yet only armored jawless swimmers. Oceans are rich, diverse, and alien. And then, things begin to change. You wouldn't notice at first. The temperature dips a little, the winds blow differently. But over time, thousands, then hundreds of thousands of years, the shift becomes undeniable. Glaciers begin to form, slowly crawling across the southern supercontinent of Gondwana. Ice builds, inch by inch, locking up more and more of the Earth's water. Sea levels begin to fall. To you, if you lived in the shallow coastal waters, this would feel like the sea retreating. Slowly, your habitat disappears. Reefs are left exposed to the air, bleaching and dying. Entire ecosystems vanish as the continental shelves turn into barren plains. Food chains collapse. If you're a trilobite that lived near the shore, you starve. If you're a filter feeder, dependent on specific water depths, the changing salinity or light ruins your delicate balance. The cold deepens. Glaciers grow taller. The air thins further. A cascade of extinctions begins. Not dramatic at first, but relentless. Entire groups of graptolites, brachiopods, and conidants vanish. Up to 85% of all marine species are lost. But even this is not the end. Eventually, the Earth swings again. The ice begins to melt. Temperatures rise, but this is not relief, it's chaos. As the glaciers vanish, the cold, fresh meltwater floods into the oceans, disrupting the global currents. Oxygen levels in the water plummet. Whole regions of the ocean become dead zones. The few species that survive the freeze now struggle against suffocation. Imagine yourself again, suspended in the water. The surface is warmer now, almost deceptively pleasant. But below you, the deep is stagnant, dark, choked. No current to bring nutrients, no life left to feed on. The silence is profound. This cycle of freeze and thaw, destruction and redisruption, defines the Ordovician-Silurian extinction. It's not a single blow, but 2 long uneven punches, spaced across a few million years. The survivors are those who can adapt, hide, or outlast. Tiny plankton that can float through both hot and cold. bottom dwellers that cling to whatever detritus is left. Life does not vanish entirely. It bends, it shrinks, it holds on in corners. By the end, the Earth looks different. Sea levels stabilize, climate warms gently, new ecosystems begin to form, new species rise to take the place of the lost. But for millions of years, the memory remains etched into the rocks. Written in the sudden disappearance of once thriving creatures, to live through the Ordovician Silurian extinction would not have been a single moment of terror. It would have been a slow, grinding transformation, the world closing its doors one by one until only a few were left open. A thinning of breath, a loss of light, and then, after what would feel like forever calm, not recovery, not triumph, just calm, the beginning of something else. Segment 2. The End of the Dinosaurs. What really happened at the Cretaceous-Speleogene boundary? Imagine a world filled with life. It is lush, green, and vibrant. Great forests of cycads, ginkgos, and flowering plants stretch from pole to pole. The air is warmer than today, thick with the scent of resin and decay. And the sky is alive with the beating wings of insects and small feathered creatures. On the ground, the earth rumbles faintly, with the weight of giant herbivorous titans like Triceratops graze in herds, their horns glinting beneath the sun, while Tyrannosaurus lurks beyond the tree line, patient and powerful. This is the late Cretaceous, some 66 million years ago. Life has been abundant for tens of millions of years. Evolution has reached a strange and beautiful complexity. There is no sign, none, at all, that this world is on the edge of ending. And then far above, a stone begins to fall. It is a piece of rock, yes, but no ordinary stone. It is vast, nearly 7 miles across, traveling faster than sound, faster than anything in the skies. It is silent at first, too fast to hear, too distant to see. But as it approaches, it heats the air before it, turning the upper atmosphere to fire. Birds turn from the sky. The ground begins to tremble. The impact is not just a collision. It is a planetary wound. The asteroid strikes the peninsula near what is now Chicxulub, and in an instant, 100 million megatons of energy are released. Shockwaves race around the globe, mountains ripple. The sea lifts and crashes back into itself in tsunamis hundreds of feet high. Entire coastlines vanish. But if you were far from the blast, you might not die immediately. You might survive that first day. It is what comes after that seals your fate. Dust, ash, and vaporized rock are launched high into the atmosphere, forming a shroud around the earth. The sun dims. The sky, once bright with warmth, becomes gray, then black. Photosynthesis ceases. Plants wither. The food chain collapses. Without sunlight, temperatures plummet, not all at once, but steadily. It is not fire alone that ends the reign of the dinosaurs. It is winter. For weeks, then months, the earth grows colder. Herbivores, lacking fresh vegetation, grow thin and weak. Carnivores find less and less prey. Smaller creatures burrow. Some take refuge in deep water. Others retreat into forests, waiting, sleeping. But for the great dinosaurs, there is no escape. The conditions of their world have shifted beyond recognition. Evolution, which had shaped their massive bodies and complex behaviors over tens of millions of years, cannot adapt in decades. And then, as quietly as it began, it ends. The dust settles, the sky is clear. But the world is different now. More than 75% of all species are gone. It's not just dinosaurs, but the flying pterosaurs, the great marine reptiles like mosasaurs and plesiosaurs, and countless others. Entire families of plankton, tiny though they were, wiped out, altering the chemistry of the oceans. Some survive. Birds, descendants of small feathered dinosaurs, find a way forward. Mammals, once small and timid, now emerge into niches left vacant. The forests regrow differently this time. Flowers spread, pollinators multiply. The age of the dinosaurs gives way to the age of mammals and, eventually, to us. We often imagine the extinction of the dinosaurs as a single fiery moment, a sudden snap in the timeline. But in truth, it was an unfolding, a slow-motion fall, from a peak of life into a dark valley. The asteroid did not simply kill, it unbalanced, disrupted, and then dismantled an entire web of interdependence. And the dinosaurs, for all their strength, were part of that web. If you had lived then, perhaps as a small, feathered raptor in the twilight forests of what is now Asia. You might have seen the final herds of hadrosaurs vanish from the plains. You might have seen the nesting grounds grow silent. You might have walked beneath a sky that never truly lightened for weeks on end. And if you survived, if you adapted, hid, or waited, you might have found yourself in a quieter, emptier world. A world of opportunity, yes, but also one of immense loss. And today, the silence of their passing still lingers. Again, fossils and birdsong. In the subtle rhythm of evolutionary inheritance, the asteroid struck once, but its echoes ripple still. Segment 3. The Great Dying. What life looked like during the Permian-Triassic extinction. Close your eyes and imagine standing near the edge of a shallow, inland sea. The year means nothing. It is roughly 252 million years ago. And the land is vast, dry, and stretched beneath a reddish sun. You are somewhere on Pangaea, the massive supercontinent that dominates the Earth. There are no flowering plants, no birds, no grass. Only endless stretches of coniferous forests, ferns, and strange seed-bearing plants. On the ground, the ancestors of mammals, roam creatures like Lystrosaurus, squat and tusked, waddling between low trees. Insects hum in the thick air. Giant amphibians rest in shaded pools. All seem stable. But beneath your feet, deep below the crust, pressure builds. The trouble begins in Siberia. Their volcanic activity, unlike anything seen before or since, begins to erupt slowly at first, then with dreadful consistency. This is not a single volcano. It is a flood basalt event. For hundreds of thousands of years, magma pours onto the surface, layering the land with lava. The Siberian traps, as they will come to be known, release unimaginable quantities of carbon dioxide and methane. The skies are choked with ash. The oceans warm, slowly but surely. You would not see the full extent immediately. It would feel like a distant thunder, a haze that lingers longer each summer. Plants begin to die, especially those sensitive to changing seasons. The polar regions grow warmer. Forests retreat. The oceans, meanwhile, begin to die. As carbon dioxide fills the atmosphere, it dissolves into the seas. The pH drops. The water becomes more acidic. Coral-like creatures vanish first, unable to maintain their calcium shells. Then, as the warming continues, the oceans stratify. Surface waters heat up, and the layers below become still, no longer mixing with the oxygen above. The deep sea turns anoxic, starved of oxygen, and then anaerobic. In these dead zones, bacteria that thrive without oxygen begin to flourish, releasing hydrogen sulfide gas, a toxic, colorless fume that smells of rotten eggs and kills whatever breathes. If you were swimming in those seas, your world would grow quieter each day. The fish would vanish. The plankton would disappear. The water, once teeming with trilobites, brachiopods, and ammonites, would become eerily clear. Not clean, but empty. On land, the forests fall. The soil erodes. Rivers run thick with mud and debris. Whole ecosystems unravel. Giant insects, once dominant, begin to disappear. The great synapsids protomammals, with their strange sprawling gaits and warm-blooded hopes, dwindle. The heat is constant. The rains change. Drought becomes the norm. And all the while, the volcanoes continue. You would feel it not as a single disaster, but as a slow closing of doors. Every generation would find fewer species, fewer calls in the forest, fewer ripples in the water. It might not feel like the end of the world, just the shrinking of it. Scientists estimate that this extinction unfolded over perhaps 60,000 years an instant in geological time. But a drawn-out agony in biological terms, the worst of it may have lasted just a few thousand. And yet by the end, over 90% of marine life was gone. Entire families vanished. Reef systems, which had existed for hundreds of millions of years, disappeared entirely. On land, the food web collapsed. Few vertebrates survived, yet some did. Lystrosaurus, the squat, pig-sized synapsid, endured. Its secret was likely its adaptability. It could burrow. It had a simple diet. It bred rapidly. After the extinction, it became one of the most common vertebrates on the planet. Its fossils found across what are now Africa, Antarctica, and Asia. Small, flexible life forms, Those that could wait out the storm or live in its margins were the ones to inherit what remained. Eventually, the Earth began to heal. The volcanoes quieted. The atmosphere cooled. Slowly, oxygen returned to the seas. New species began to evolve different, smaller, more resilient. The Triassic period dawned, not with fanfare, but with silence. Life returned. The Great Dying remains the most severe extinction in Earth's history. It was not a comet, not an impact, not a war of predator and prey. It was the Earth itself, turned inward, and yet life continued. Bent, bowed, and changed, but never broken. If you had lived through it, if you had found shelter, burrowed deep, or drifted far from the heat, you might have emerged into a world unfamiliar, barren, and still. And slowly, step by cautious step, you would have helped repopulate it. Segment 4. The Devonian Decline. When forests grew and oceans died. Imagine a warm, shallow sea stretching to the horizon. Beneath the surface, the water is alive, crowded with armored placoderms, bizarre fish with heavy bone plating and toothless jaws. There are early sharks too, nimble and sleek, darting among reefs built not by corals but by sponges and ancient algae. This is Earth some 375 million years ago. Continents are still in motion, drifting toward the formation of a new supercontinent, volcanoes the coastlines. The sky is warm, the atmosphere thick with oxygen. On the land, life has just begun to take root, literally. Along the rivers and coastlines, primitive plants small, moss-like and rooted in damp soil, have begun to climb toward the sun. Then, slowly, forests emerge. Towering ferns, early seed-bearing trees. Roots crack into rock, leaves catch sunlight and shadow. For the first time in Earth's history, the land grows green. But these forests, beautiful and new, set in motion a chain of events that will transform and nearly end life as it was. The plants, in pulling carbon dioxide from the air, cool the planet. This does not happen overnight. But over millions of years, the steady drawdown of greenhouse gases tilts Earth's balance. Glaciers begin to form again. Weather patterns shift. And as roots penetrate deep into the bedrock, they increase weathering-washing minerals into the seas. This triggers blooms of algae in the water blooms that use up oxygen and then die, sinking and decomposing. The result? Anoxic oceans. Vast stretches of marine habitat that are dead, still, and suffocating. If you lived in these seas, you would feel it not as a moment of disaster, but as a slow tightening. Each generation, fewer fish, fewer places to feed. Strange new conditions that leave your eggs unviable. The reef you once knew collapses into decay. Then water warms, then cools unpredictably. Acid levels rise. Your world shrinks. These changes did not strike everywhere at once, or did they spare all creatures equally? It was a patchwork extinction, slow and uneven. There were at least 4 or 5 distinct extinction pulses during the Devonian each, removing layers of life from the ocean's complexity. Coral-like reef builders vanished almost entirely. Trilobites, which had flourished for hundreds of millions of years, were greatly reduced. Brachiopods, crinoids, and ammonites all diminished. What made the Devonian extinction so unusual is how long it took. Some estimates place the span of its decline at over 20 million years. Imagine that. An extinction not as a sudden blow, but as a long illness. An age of innovation, turning to an age of erosion, biological erosion, where possibility gave way to limitation. But even amid this loss, life was changing in surprising ways. On land, vertebrates, the earliest tetrapods, began to evolve from lobe-finned fish. These were creatures that could push themselves from puddle to puddle, awkward and slow, but persistent. Life, in the face of vanishing oceans, began to explore the shore. And in the shallows, smaller, more adaptable species survived. Cartilaginous fishery sharks scanned into the gaps left by dying reef dwellers. The collapse of old ecosystems opened niches for new forms. Survival did not depend on strength or size, it depended on flexibility. By the end of the Devonian period, much had changed. The great reef systems that had once stretched across the planet were gone and would not return for tens of millions of years. The age of fishes had ended not with a crash, but with a long, quiet fading. If you had lived through it as a trilobite watching your numbers dwindle, or a small wriggling vertebrate dragging yourself onto a humid bank, you would not have known that you stood at a turning point. You would only know that the world had grown harder, that the familiar was gone. Something was coming, but it was not yet clear what. It is worth noting that this extinction, quiet, lengthy, and complex, is one of the most difficult to fully understand. The fossil record is patchy. The causes are many. Climate change, ocean anoxia, volcanic activity, even possible asteroid impacts. But its message remains unmistakable. Life on Earth is never guaranteed. Stability is a temporary gift. And even the most beautiful innovations like forest scan without intention tip the balance too far. And yet, the story does not end in darkness. The survivors of the Devonian extinction will one day give rise to the dinosaurs, to birds, to mammals, to us. Segment 5. The Pleistocene Extinction. When the megafauna disappeared, imagine you are standing on a broad, open plain, somewhere in what is now North America. The wind carries the cold bite of an approaching ice age, and the land is alive with movement. Now, to your left, a herd of mammoths plods steadily through the snow, their heavy coats trailing frost, their tusks gleaming in the pale light. In the distance, a pack of dire wolves stalks a weakened bison. Nearby, a towering short-faced bear, a predator, so large it could look a man in the eye, lumbers through the brush. This is the Pleistocene, and it is a world of giants. These megafauna, large animals, often weighing hundreds or thousands of pounds, roamed across nearly every continent. In South America, glyptodonts, giant armadillo-like creatures, foraged beside lumbering ground sloths the size of small cars. In Australia, Diprotodon enormous, wombat-like, herbivores grazed alongside giant kangaroos. In Europe and Asia, woolly rhinoceroses and cave lions hunted and wandered through snowy tundra. Life was cold, yes, but astonishingly diverse. Humans were there too. Our ancestors lived among these giants, hunted, gathered, and learned to use fire, language, and tools in a world still largely shaped by ice age cycles. Glaciers advanced and retreated, sea levels rose and fell, forests turned a step and back again. Yet amid this change, life had adapted. For hundreds of thousands of years, these species endured. And then, as the ice age began to recede, something changed. In a relatively short geological time frame, just a few thousand years, these giants began to vanish. Not everywhere at once, but in a pattern that now seems painfully familiar. In Australia, the megafauna disappeared shortly after the arrival of the first humans, around 45,000 years ago. In North America, mammoths, saber-toothed cats, and mastodons died out between 13,000 and 10,000 years ago, shortly after the arrival of the Clovis people. In South America, the extinctions occurred not long after human arrival as well. And in Europe and Northern Asia, the story was the same. One by one, the giants disappeared. But why? It is one of the great historical questions. Two primary culprits stand at the center: climate change and human activity. And the truth likely lies somewhere between the two. As the last ice age ended, the world warmed rapidly. Glaciers retreated. Vegetation patterns shifted. Species that had evolved for cold, open plains suddenly found themselves in warmer, more forested environments. Their habitats shrank. Food became scarcer. Some may have adapted, others could not. But the timing is too precise to ignore. In every region, the extinction of megafauna closely followed the arrival of humans. We were skilled hunters, increasingly social, and armed with tools and fire. We learned to coordinate in groups, track migrations, and use the landscape to our advantage. Some researchers believe that even small bands of humans, if strategically successful, could push a slow-reproducing species to the brink within a few hundred years. It didn't take large-scale slaughter. It just took persistence. And for many species, this combination of pressure-shifting climate, shrinking habitat, and the sudden appearance of an intelligent, cooperative predator was too much. The loss was staggering. Gone were the mammoths and mastodons, the saber-toothed cats and woolly rhinos, the giant beavers and towering birds. Gone, too, were the ecosystems they shaped: grasslands trampled by massive herds, forests kept open by browsing giants, prey species kept in check by predators that no longer existed. The earth grew quieter, and yet a few survived. The bison, the moose, The elephants of Africa and Asia, the reindeer, bear the marks of a shared past with vanished cousins. And with the humans, carried their stories in our bones, our myths, and our memory. The mammoth appears in cave art, in carvings, and in the oral traditions of Arctic peoples thousands of years after the last one fell. Of all the mass extinctions, the Pleistocene is the one we are most closely tied to. We did not just live through it. We may have helped cause it. And it reminds us that extinction does not always come from beyond the stars or beneath the earth. Sometimes it walks on two legs. Sometimes it carries fire. Today we live in a world still echoing from that loss. A world shaped by survivors, and perhaps still haunted by the absence of giants. Segment 6. What survives after extinction? A history of resilience and renewal. After every mass extinction, there is silence. Not total, but deep. A softening of the Earth's great biological chorus. Gone are the thunderous migrations of giants, the coral cities of ancient seas, the steady rhythms of vanished ecosystems. For a time, the planet feels subdued, almost emptied. But beneath the surface, within forests that have yet to grow, in oceans that slowly regain breath, life waits. And it begins again, as a repeat, but as a reinvention. After the Ordovician-Silurian extinction, it was the brachiopods, trilobites, and early coral-like creatures that reclaimed the seas. They spread across the ocean floors, not in defiance of what had been lost, but because they could. In their survival was the promise of new complexity. What was once dominated by a few clades diversified into many. Evolution filled the void. Following the Devonian decline, vertebrates began to take center stage. The collapse of marine ecosystems left room for early amphibians to flourish on land. It was here, in the quiet aftermath of that extinction, that the blueprint for all tetrapods was solidified. From these uncertain beginnings, clumsy steps on muddy shores would one day come reptiles, birds, mammals, and humans. The great dying at the end of the Permian, with its 90% casualty rate, seemed nearly to have ended complex life altogether. And yet the Triassic began with small, nimble survivors, Lifestrosaurus among them. The simplified food webs of that recovery era fostered rapid evolution. Archosaurs began to rise, those ancestors of crocodiles and dinosaurs, and with them, a new age slowly dawned. From the ashes of near-total collapse came the dominance of dinosaurs. And when the dinosaurs themselves fell, it was not the large or the mighty who survived, it was the small. Birds in the trees, mammals in their burrows, insects, amphibians, life that could hide, adapt, wait. In their survival, the age of mammals began. Without the extinction of the dinosaurs, there would have been no space for us. Even the Pleistocene, with its slow vanishing of megafauna, left behind survivors who adapted to new climates, new predators, new landscapes. The world we live in today, the animals we see, the forests and fields and rivers we know, is a product of that most recent renewal. In this way, extinction is not just an end. It is a great reshuffling. But this renewal is never immediate. After an extinction, diversity takes millions of years to rebuild. Fossil record shows this clearly. Ecosystems become simpler. Webs collapse, then slowly, tentatively reform. It is as though life learns to breathe again, first shallow, uncertain breaths, and only later full ones. Some scientists describe these periods as evolutionary bottlenecks. The diversity of life is squeezed, pared down to a few lineages that then radiate outward, like new branches growing from a fire-blackened trunk. Often, these new branches look nothing like what came before. The dominance of one group gives way to another. Survivors are not merely the fittest in a traditional sense, they are the most fortunate, the most adaptable, the most quietly persistent. And always, always, it is the small and the hidden who first return. The underdogs, those who live in the margins. The world after extinction belongs first to the overlooked. There is a kind of comfort in this pattern, reminder that life is not fragile, but deeply, astonishingly resilient. Not because it cannot be destroyed, but because it always reemerges, in new forms, in new places, in ways that could not be predicted from what came before. And we, as humans, are a product of that resilience. We are the inheritors of survival, but we are also something new. Unlike any species before, we are conscious of extinction. We dig fossils from the ground and wonder at their stories. We name the vanished. We write histories of life and death and rebirth. And in our time, we face a new kind of extinction, not caused by a comet or volcano, but by the slow unfolding of our own impact. Which leads us gently toward reflection. Segment 7, a sixth extinction, the human impact on Earth's biosphere. If you were to look at the planet from a satellite, high above the swirling blue and green, you might not immediately see the signs of extinction. The forests still stretch, the oceans still gleam. Life appears vibrant. But look more closely, and the pattern reveals itself. The amphibians vanishing silently from streams in the Amazon, the coral reefs bleaching under warming waters, the insects declining almost invisibly across temperate farmlands. The great mammals or rhinos, elephants, tigers dwindling, not because they cannot survive, but because they no longer have space to live. This is extinction in slow motion. The phrase sixth mass extinction is not a metaphor. It is a term used by scientists to describe what may become one of the most profound biological losses since the time of the dinosaurs. Species are disappearing at rates. It's estimated to be 100 to 1,000 times higher than the natural background extinction rate. And the cause is not hidden in magma or asteroid craters. It lies in habitat destruction, pollution, invasive species, overexploitation, and above all, climate change. Yet this extinction is unusual. It does not follow a single cause. It is multi-threaded, entangled in economics, technology, population growth, and global trade. Forests are cut down not out of malice, but to grow food and build homes. Oceans are overfished, not out of cruelty, but hunger. Fossil fuels are burned not in rage, but routine. And so, this extinction moves forward without a singular moment of collapse. It is a quiet tide, rising steadily. One of the most striking aspects of the current extinction is how much of it is happening unseen. The loss of charismatic megafauna lions, whales, pandas receives attention and sometimes intervention. But most extinction happens among the small, the obscure, the unrecorded. Tiny frogs in cloud forests, beetles in specific patches of bark, fungi known only to a few field biologists, species that disappear before they are even named. And yet the implications are profound. Biodiversity is not just decoration, it is the scaffolding of ecosystems. Pollinators, the decomposers, the regulators of water and carbon and nitrogen. When enough species vanish, the systems themselves begin to falter. A forest may still stand, but it may no longer regenerate. Coral reef may still appear, but it may no longer grow. There is a threshold beyond which resilience turns to fragility. And we are nearing it. But it is not only ecological. There is something deeply human about this moment. For the first time in Earth's history, one species is capable of causing a mass extinction and is also aware of it. We are both witness and agent. This dual role is unprecedented. The dinosaurs could not see their end coming. The trilobites could not contemplate loss. But we can. And this awareness changes everything. It means we are not only capable of destruction, we are capable of choice. Across the world, efforts to conserve, protect, and restore are taking root. National parks, marine reserves, reforestation projects, breeding programs, climate accords. But they are acts of resistance against the tide. Perhaps more profoundly, they are acts of care. Care for species we will never meet. Care for forests we will never walk through. Care for a future not our own. In this way, the story of the sixth extinction is still being written. Its ending is not yet set. If history teaches us anything, it is that life endures. After every extinction, something remains. The Earth rebuilds. But what survives depends on what exists at the moment of collapse. If we lose too much too quickly, what follows may be simpler, poorer, smaller. Or, if we act with foresight, with humility, and with resolve, it may be richer, more balanced, more aware. We cannot stop extinction. It is a natural part of evolution. But we can slow it, shape it, and perhaps for the first time, choose what kind of world we leave behind. As you drift now towards sleep, let your mind settle not in despair, but in reflection. The Earth has always changed. Life has always adapted. And we brief sparks in a long story have the rare opportunity to choose reverence over ruin. Tomorrow will come, and what it carries depends on the quiet choices made today. Segment 8. A gentle epilogue. Time, loss, and the comfort of continuity. Time, in the geological sense, is vast beyond comprehension. Mountains rise and erode, oceans form and vanish. Species emerge, flourish, and fade into memory. And yet within that great expanse, there is a kind of calm. The Earth is patient. It has endured 5 mass extinctions. Each left it changed, yet each was followed by life, rising quietly from the ruins. This is not optimism. It is simply the nature of things. Life adapts. Life continues. And so do we. In the stillness of night, it is possible to feel overwhelmed by the scale of it all. The long ages, the vanished creatures, the slow unfolding of tragedy and resilience. But also in that stillness is a kind of peace. You are not separate from this story. You are made of it. Calcium in your bones once swirled in the oceans where trilobites crawled. The oxygen you breathe was shaped by ancient ferns. The warmth you feel comes from a sun that has watched all things pass. Extinction reminds us that nothing lasts forever, but it also reminds us that nothing is ever truly lost. The mammoth is gone, but the elephant walks. The forests of the Carboniferous are coal now, warming homes in winter. The birds that greet the morning are in a quiet way, the last echo of the dinosaurs. Life does not repeat. It transforms. And even now, in a world shaped by our choices, that transformation continues. Perhaps then, the comfort is not in permanence, but in motion, in the gentle, ceaseless unfolding of life, even amid loss. To live is to stand for a moment in a story that stretches both forward and back. You are here now, breathing slowly, quietly, part of a planet that has seen so much and still turns. Let that thought carry you into rest. Let your mind wander not into worry, but into wonder. Let the memory of trilobites, of ammonites, of mammoths and forests and vanished seas drift softly across your thoughts, like fog rolling in over ancient hills. You are small, yes, but not insignificant. You are a witness. You're a part of the story. And as you rest now, as sleep gently overtakes you, know this: the Earth will continue. And you are safely, tenderly, timelessly within its care. Good night.